Hush between strings. A piano lies even when it tells the truth. Every note you hear has already been negotiated, wood against metal, felt against history, tension pretending to be serenity. You learn to read the instrument the way you read a face, where it gives, where it resists, what it's hiding behind polite resonance. My work is to listen until the lie softens and the truth agrees to be tuned. I'm Julian. I tune, voice, and resurrect pianos in a workshop that smells like shellac and patience. The floor is powdered with graphite and felt dust. The light is good in the way light should be when your hands have to be exact. I love the rituals, the slow twist of the hammer on a pin, the way a single half turn changes the temperature of a room, the hush after a chord decides to stop arguing with itself. Some afternoons I think I fix time. Then I remember all I touch is tension. Lena says I romanticize the kind of work that ruins men's backs. She dances, choreographs, when a company is brave, and her body keeps its own ledger, bruises that look like constellations, muscles that learn songs faster than heads do. We met in a church where I was coaxing a beat-up Steinway into humility, and she was teaching a line of teenagers how to take steps without apologizing. Our first kiss tasted like oranges and rosin. When she moved in, we made rules because we liked each other too honestly not to. Before, not after. Nobody else in our bed. Don't make home compete with a story you could have told earlier. We wrote it on the back of a music store receipt, laughed at ourselves, and taped it inside the junk drawer. You keep vows where you keep batteries and string, reachable when something goes dark. The commission that moved me off my map came from a building that didn't believe in ceilings. The Hawthorne, a glass and marble confection where the lobby had its own publicist, was installing a concert grand in the atrium for an art gala. The instrument had a pedigree and an attitude. "We need it perfect," said the woman in pearls who smelled expensive without being vulgar. "There will be cameras. There will be a patron who thinks he's subtle. There will be a woman singing who refuses to lip sync. Can you make the piano behave?" "I can make it honest," I said. The woman's mouth did a small, approving thing. "Good. Honesty that photographs well. Thursday, 7 a.m. before the rehearsals." I arrived before the lobby's echoes had learned their names. The grand sat like a black ocean, lid on the long stick, strings bright as the inside of a watch. I set the temperament, found the center octave that would dictate everyone else's compromise, and worked outward note by note, the way you walk a stubborn animal until it remembers how to be led without humiliation. The D above middle C kept pulling sharp like a child who insists on being taller. I coaxed. I argued. I needled two hammers that had become too proud. I played a slow Debussy progression to invite the instrument into its own idea of itself. "Don't stop," a voice said, low and precise. A ribbon dropped on my shoulder. She stood beside the piano with a paper cup and eyes that didn't go with a room this public. If sound could lean, hers leaned against you without permission. She wore a silk blouse the color of an apology I would forgive. The ring on her hand was the size of an opinion. "Play that again," she said, softer. "I'm better with a wrench than with hands on show," I said. "But it's a pretty chord. I can be persuaded." She smiled without showing teeth. "Everyone in this building can be persuaded. I prefer the ones who admit it." She set down her cup, stepped closer, and put her fingers, pianist's hands, strong and articulate, on the keys exactly where mine had been. When she played, the lobby changed shape. Echoes became listeners. "Seraphine Vale," she said, without looking up. "Sera, I'm the woman who refuses to lip sync." "Julian," I said, "I'm the man the piano refuses to ignore." She tried an arpeggio and flicked her glance toward the ceiling. "It's bright in here." "It's honest," I said again, which in my trade is a synonym for unforgiving. Honesty is cruel before it's kind. I can soften the attack, voice some hammers, change how the felt releases, but then it's a different piano. Sera took that in, then nodded. No, let it be severe. I'll come to it. She slid onto the bench so easily you understood her body had learned long ago where to sit when it needed to be listened to. She sang, just a line, nothing grand, a phrase you could hide in your pocket for later, and my arms turned to static. The sound came from a place that had rewritten its lease and decided not to pay. I pretended to measure string pressure while she practiced rebellion without announcing it. The patron with subtlety issues arrived about an hour later. You've seen men like him in doorways. The watch that pretends not to make a scene, the suit that fit before breakfast, charm rolled thin and used as currency. Adrian Vale, he said to me like it was a brand. To Sera he said, lighter, "You're early, love. Are we performing effort today?" Practice is surveillance for people who think discipline happens by accident, she said, not unkindly. He laughed a little too loudly and kissed her cheek like he was buying a building. And then there were handlers, and a publicist with worry disguised as eyeliner, and a sound engineer who wanted to put a mic inside the instrument as if a grand piano were a patient whose heart he distrusted. I tuned around them. I know how to be furniture when men think they're architecture. Sera came by my workshop 2 days later, unannounced but inevitable, carrying a bag of cherries and questions. My bench is a pew. My shelves are hymnals organized by grit and hope. She wandered the room like a woman auditioning secrets and sat on the low stool I use when I refuse to admit my back hurts. "Teach me something the camera won't catch," she said. I did what I always do when I don't want to be impressive. I opened the fallboard of the junk room upright in the corner, the one with chipped ivory and a missing screw, and showed her how the action looks when it forgets to be elegant. "A piano wants to be believed," I said. "It will behave if you let it have its need. Like people." She leaned so close a strand of hair brushed my wrist. The smell of her was stage makeup cleaned off properly, cotton, and the ghost of something tart. "Is that your professional opinion on people, Julian?" "That's my professional opinion on tension," I said. She put a finger on the felt of a hammer, pressed, released. "Before," she said, as if continuing a conversation I wasn't sure we'd started. "Before anything happens that we'll pretend wasn't a choice. You tell me if you want. I tell you if I do. Not in your home, not in mine, not in rooms where my husband pays for gratitude to be practiced. Do you understand the currency I'm using?" I thought of the receipt in our junk drawer, Lena's pencil strokes underlined twice. I thought of the way Sera's voice had made me reconsider the shape of seriousness. "I do," I said. "I'll tell you before." "Good," she said, and finally smiled with all her mouth. "I like men who can tune a unit of time." I told Lena that night because the receipt lives where my hand can find it in the dark. We sat on the rug with takeout between us and the cat pretending to be uninterested in dumplings. I said Sera's name out loud. Lena folded one leg under herself and pinched the bridge of her nose like a dancer calculating pain could be organized. "Before," she repeated, and pulled the drawer open to tap the rule with her knuckle. "Thank you. Keep our bed our bed. And don't turn me into an audience to a performance I didn't buy tickets for." "I won't," I said. "I don't want a performance." "What do you want?" she asked, with the brutality of someone who loves you enough to hear the answer. "An honest sound," I said, "in a room that doesn't care who hears it." "Then be the kind of man who finds that and still comes back to me with his hands clean," she said. She kissed me slow as proof of ownership that didn't look like ownership at all. The gala rehearsals were a little city of their own. On the third afternoon, the building's HVAC decided to flex. The temperature rose, the strings did what strings do under heat, and the piano started lying in a new key. I tuned around the puddles, cleared the bass where the wire's growl swallowed gentler intentions, and needled 3 treble hammers to stop their glassy gossip. Sera watched like a woman cheating the casino. "This is the sexiest thing I've seen in months," she murmured, not bothering to make it a secret. "Whoever gets you excited by regulation is a lucky person," I said. "That's not how luck has functioned lately," she said, serious again, and her eyes did a private weather change I recognized in artists when the world asks them to monetize tenderness. We met then in a practice room at the conservatory where it is always late and someone is always making a new mistake into a rehearsal. The soundproofing turned the air plush. The fluorescence flickered like an off-brand halo. She closed the door with the same care she would give a child's face, and when she came to me, it wasn't showy. We kissed like two people who had read the same manual and ignored its punctuation. Her mouth was clean, sure. I pressed my palms to the small of her back and felt the way she rose onto her toes, the exact moment the body gives itself permission. We didn't come apart until laughter, hours, surprised, made space in the room for a second decision. We made it together. "Later," she said, forehead to mine, breath a little ragged. "Somewhere you don't have to tune the ceiling first." A motel near the river knows anonymity is a virtue. We left no souvenirs and brought no apologies. I won't diagram us. My hands learned the geography of her shoulder, the hollows that remember childhood, the slow, grateful tightening of a body that has been looked at too often and seen too little. She was generous and exacting. I was careful and hungry. We made a quiet spectacle of restraint until restraint became unnecessary. After, we lay on a bedspread that had seen worse and talked like honest thieves. She told me she hated how often charm was the invoice she was presented instead of a gift. I told her tuning is mercy with a screwdriver. We didn't pretend anything would be easier tomorrow. Adrian saw me in the lobby the next day and asked, for the cameras, whether I was proud of my work. "It's not my work when it's being photographed," I said. "It's the piano." He laughed. "You artisans, you make humility look expensive." He clapped me on the shoulder like a man who wanted the room to think he trusted the help. "My wife adores the instrument. She has a good ear for obedience." "She has a good ear," I said, and he heard what I didn't say and let it pass like a man letting a rumor buy itself a drink. I told Lena I had been with Sera. I said it before the washing machine could compete with my voice. Lena listened like a person measuring the space between two notes. She reached for my hand, turned it over, traced the callus at my thumb where the tuning hammer lives. "Before," she said again, "you look like a man who did not humiliate himself." "I don't want to be one who does," I said. The night of the gala, the hawthorn dressed itself like the world was going to judge it harshly, and it had decided to look good for the sentencing. Light fell over the grand like glass water. I tuned one last time in my quiet way, half turn here, a persuasion there, and checked the whole instrument with a slow Bach prelude I use when I'm trying to remind myself what physics can do with prayer. Sera walked out in black. Cameras rearranged their angle to please her. She saw me and didn't break stride, but the corner of her mouth confessed. She sang the first song like a confession she planned to deny later. The second was a standard about wanting and weather. A donor cried into his own collar. Adrian did that lazy clap rich men master so they don't bruise their own hands. The third song started with the D above middle C that liked to misbehave. It behaved. The whole room behaved. For 3 minutes, honesty was the only expensive thing that felt correctly priced. After the elevators and flattery closed around Sera like an evening gown, I went home. In our kitchen, the receipt rustled when we opened the drawer for the bottle opener. We ate leftover noodles standing up. Lena touched my jaw with 2 fingers and then my throat and said, "You're impossibly sincere." "I'm learning to be," I said. I saw Sera twice more in places where the furniture had no opinions. We were kind and specific and left the room better than we found it. On the second of those nights, with her hair damp from a shower that smelled like hotel soap trying to be bergamot, she lay with her head on my chest and said, "I am going to leave. Not you, the house, the handsome cage. I am going to live somewhere with bad light and good neighbors. I will fail at pretending my life requires marble." "You want company?" I asked. It wasn't a proposal, it was a check for understanding. "No," she said, and kissed my sternum like I'd asked for luck. "I want you to keep doing what you do to air and wood. I want to know you are somewhere in this city making noise make sense." She left the Hawthorne a week after the press stopped being fed. Efficiencies were cut in the lobby. The piano learned a new duty, to be played occasionally by children with sticky fingers, as if it were a dog who had learned 3 tricks and loved all of them. Adrian hired somebody else to maintain it, someone who believed in apps and never carried graphite under his nails. I watched from the sidewalk once in the reflection and felt both pride and relief exist in the same breath. I still have Sera's number. We don't use it. I still tune the church pianos and the conservatory uprights and the instrument in a woman's living room that holds the exact chord she needs to play to forgive herself for Tuesday. In our apartment, Lena keeps making dances that are smarter than the music that funds them. At night, we leave the windows open in a season that admits it will end. We make coffee the way poor people and kings both like it, strong and hot and shared. Sometimes she presses her ear to my chest while we lie there and she says, "Your heart sounds like an A that refuses to be bullied into 440. And I answer, "I'll pull it where it needs to be, gently." I close the workshop as a catechism, polish rags folded, voicing needles capped, sandpaper put back in its little reliquary of envelopes, the hammer placed with its handles where mark exactly where my palm will find it in the morning. I lock the door and listen to the city beating in mismatched time signatures. A piano isn't a promise. It's an arrangement. You keep it honest as long as you can. You return when the heat rises or the crowd is unkind, or the key your life demands starts pulling sharp again. You put your ear to the soundboard, breathe, and begin. Tiny turns, steady hand, no humiliation. A chord that finally sits down and admits what it is.